Central Florida to speak on social justice and environmental issues that make a difference in our lives. All of our speakers are free to express their opinions, but please know that the opinions expressed are not necessarily the views of the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Lake County. Unitarian Universalism has a long history of working for social and environmental justice. Everywhere in the world, our congregation is proud to be sponsoring this lecture by immigration lawyers Bennett&Townsend and Bennett, speaking on immigration policies that hurt our families and our economy. Before we welcome them, however, I want to turn this over to Val Rosado, a member of our UU technical team, who will tell you how you can use Zoom to submit your comments and questions. Val?
Thank you, Russ. We will be having questions at the end of the talk, and those questions can be submitted in the chat box. So if you think of a question while you're listening tonight, please type your question into the chat box. If you're not familiar with that, you will find the word chat somewhere on your screen. If you move your cursor around or your finger, it may be on the bottom, the top, or the side. And a box comes up when you click on that that will say chat to everyone. And type your question. When you finish typing the question, be sure to press enter. There's no button for submit or anything. Enter is the submit button. And everyone will see the question, so you can see if someone else has already asked another question. And at the end, one of our tech team will read the questions, and our two guests will answer as they can. And hopefully we'll have a lot of good questions. And we look forward to your being here tonight. Oh, also I might mention, on your computer, you have a choice of being in gallery view or speaker view. Gallery view is where you see little pictures of everybody who's attending, and speaker view, the emphasis will be on the speaker. And again, that's something you can find at the top side or bottom of your screen. If you like, gallery view on my screen looks like 9 little dots. And if I click that, I would see everybody. Hope you enjoyed tonight's presentation. Okay.
Thank you, Val. It is a tradition with Unitarian Universalists to light a chalice before religious services and important meetings. The chalice is the logo of the Unitarian Universalist Association, of which our congregation is a member. We are proud of its source in World War II, when Unitarians were active in helping Eastern Europeans fleeing Hitler and Nazism escape to safety. It has become a universal symbol of Unitarian Universalists' commitment to truth and social justice. May the words that we are about to hear take root in our heart, that we may be inspired to speak and act in ways that make for a beloved community. Our first speaker, Bennett&Townsend, has practiced immigration law exclusively since 1980, with a special emphasis on employment-based and business-related immigration and asylum. Following her graduation from the Albany Law School of Union University, she served as a VISTA attorney for the Haitian Refugee Center in Miami, and then as staff attorney at Legal Services of the Greater Miami Immigration Law Unit. Since 1994, she has had her own practice. She was one of the founding members of the Central Florida chapter of the American Immigration Lawyers Association and has served as chapter chair. She was selected as one of Florida's super lawyers in the immigration law category for years 2015 through 2020. So I'll turn this over now to Deborah.
Thank you, Russ. I'd like to reiterate that all opinions expressed in this presentation are my own and do not reflect the official policy of the UU Church, nor has the church endorsed my opinions. I've tried to eliminate the name of our president where an opinion is expressed, but I do mention him by name when I'm citing factual material. The Trump administration, next slide, please.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Kristen?
You have the slide up? Russ, I don't see the slide.
No, it isn't up. Kristen, you have the first slide? There we go.
Okay, good. Okay, we'll go back a slide, please.
Oh, come on. Almost there, hold on. There we go.
Okay. The Trump administration's immigration policies follow economic nationalism. The stated goal of Trump's America First program is to protect American workers and industries. It's a departure from decades of a US immigration policy that centered on family reunification, business and employment-based immigration, asylum, and safe harbor of refugees. Most of what he's been doing is through executive actions and informal administrative policy changes rather than formal rulemaking or through new legislation. Much attention has been given to President Trump's efforts to block asylum seekers, separate families who seek asylum at the southern border, revoke the DACA program, ban persons coming from majority Muslim countries, ramp up the deportation machinery, reduce the number of refugees admitted annually, and severely limit the due process rights of foreign nationals. Next. Next slide, please. What the public hears about, much less about, however, is the administration's efforts to severely limit legal immigration and the effects these changes are having on the US economy and business. Next, please. The National Foundation for American Policy projects that the number of legal immigrants will decline by 49% between FY 2016 and FY 2021 due to the administration's policies. How did the administration reduce legal immigration by almost 1/2 without changing US immigration law through legislation? The answer is by using extensive executive and administrative authorities, some of which are being challenged in court. Next, please. Let's take a look at these reductions by category. Immediate relatives of US citizens, they would include the parents, spouse, and unmarried minor children under the age of 21 of US citizens. The immediate relatives of US citizens category is projected to decline by over 50% between FY 2016 and 2021, meaning about 300,000 more spouses, children, and parents of US citizens would have been reunited in fiscal year 2021 absent the current administration's policies. Next, please. The next category would be family-sponsored preferences. These would include the adult children and siblings of US citizens and the spouses, minor children, and adult unmarried children of lawful permanent residents. Lawful permanent residents are so-called green card holders. What has happened is on April 22nd, the president issued a proclamation to, quote, suspend the entry of immigrants, which would include these family-based preferences, plus the parents of US citizens, for initially 60 days. Well, this suspension has been extended through the end of the year. So what this means is that unless someone, and it also includes employment-based cases, persons who are coming in through an offer of employment where a US employer could not find a qualified US worker. So in essence, since April 22, 2020, virtually everyone except for immediate relatives of US citizens and a handful of others have been blocked from finishing their immigrant visa processing, getting their immigrant visas, and coming to the United States as permanent residents. That's a lot of people. I don't know how many people, but many, many thousands of people. And the danger or the fear is, depending on which side you're on, the fear is that if this president is reelected, that this so-called temporary suspension will be extended indefinitely. Almost 94% of individuals who ultimately become lawful permanent residents of the United States go through consular processing. That is, they process their green cards, their permanent resident visas, through US consulates abroad and not within the US. This proclamation pertains to those processing abroad. So that's a huge impact right there. Next, please. Employment-based immigration has also been extremely hard hit. As I mentioned, the April 22nd proclamation applied to employment-based cases for green cards, people waiting abroad to have their immigrant visas processed. It also, what he did in June through a presidential proclamation, another one, is he suspended the entry of foreign nationals in various non-immigrant categories, people coming to work, most notably H-1B visas, which are for highly skilled people, L-1 visas for international business executives and managers. And he initially, this ban, or the suspension rather, was for 60 days, and now it's been extended through the end of the year. Again, if he's reelected, likely it will continue indefinitely. So that means a very large pool of people who are beneficial to this country are being denied issuance of visas that enable them to come to the United States. So this is another very, very, this is an act which has huge implications. Next, please. Also, I should mention, with regard to the last slide, you don't need to go back there, that their denial rates have skyrocketed. The administration, even for H-1B visas, the highly skilled visa category, they're being really, really tough on adjudications, investigations, site visits. The denial rate has shot up from about 7% in 2016 to about 30% now. So it's a whole new world. Refugees and asylum seekers have gotten hit very, very, very badly by this administration. Refugees are persons who are applying for political asylum from—
No, you don't have to have this closed.
Well, I didn't know what loud things were going on.
No, I'm listening.
Okay, well then I'll leave it open.
Did you want to look on Walmart for
yeah, refugees are applying from outside the country. They're designated as refugees before they enter. Asylees are persons who present themselves at a port of entry to request asylum in the US, or they are already in the US seeking asylum. But they're persons who are unable or unwilling to return to their home country because they fear serious harm on account of one of the enumerated grounds. For fiscal year 2020, the Trump administration established an annual ceiling for refugees, which is 84% lower than the final year of the Obama administration. So the final year of the Obama administration, we admitted 110,000 refugees. Last year, we admitted 18,000. As of July 17th of this year, only 7,848 refugees have arrived in the US. I mean, it's a historic low. The president has the discretion to set the number. In fact, it appears that it's Stephen Miller in his office who's setting the number. And as we know, he doesn't like immigrants very much. Asylum seekers are not faring any better, particularly those from Central America, Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. Due to changes in the guidance given to USCIS officers who interview asylum seekers at the US borders, asylum claims based on gang-based persecution or domestic violence are no longer likely to qualify for asylum. Furthermore, asylum seekers from Central America have another problem. Due to a change in the administration's policy, they're no longer allowed to immediately enter the United States and apply for asylum. Rather, they're being forced to wait in Mexico. It's the so-called Refugee Protection Program, which is really a misnomer. It's also known as the Remain in Mexico program, a policy allowing the government to release migrants with asylum claims to Mexico to await their asylum hearings there. Many thousands of asylum seekers are living in dangerous and squalid conditions in makeshift camps in Mexico, awaiting the day when they are allowed to enter the United States to have their asylum cases heard before an immigration judge. So far, of these Remain in Mexico asylum applicants, only 0.1, that's not one, it's 0.1% have been approved. That's a handful. Next slide, please. Furthermore, fewer persons are becoming US citizens. Fewer are applying to become US citizens, and applications for naturalization are being denied at an alarmingly higher rate. Furthermore, the Department of Justice has just instituted a new denaturalization unit, the purpose of which is to strip citizenship from persons who were naturalized, went through the process, were vetted, were interviewed, and now they're going back into files to find any irregularities they can possibly find to strip these many people of their naturalization benefits, and in many cases, putting them in removal proceedings. Next slide, please. This increase in the denial of naturalization applications also extends to the military. There has been a significant increase in the denial rate for military members applying for asylum. Also, the number of immigrants in the military who are applying for asylum has dropped by 54% in the last 3 years. And the reason for this is that the Trump administration has changed the policy of allowing expeditious or expedited naturalization benefits for military members. To be in the military, you have to have a green card, lawful permanent resident status. And normally to apply for citizenship, you have to have been a citizen, a permanent resident for at least 5 years or 3 years if you're married to a US citizen. For permanent residents who join the military, there used to be a policy of expediting naturalization because the theory was, hey, you're good enough to fight for this country and die for this country. Why shouldn't you be a citizen? Well, the administration has stopped that. No more. Next slide, please. We also have a big problem because the processing of all kinds of cases is slowed down considerably. And of course, due to the coronavirus pandemic, the USCIS offices were closed for months. And instead of trying to find other ways of interviewing and doing oath ceremonies for citizens. They have not done that. So the end result is about 300,000 immigrants who should be citizens in time to vote this November will not be. They will not be citizens in time because of these delays. Next slide, please. There's also been a considerable decline in tourism to the US and also the number of students coming to the US to study. This, of course, has an economic impact. It's significant for the tourism industry, the hospitality industry, but for foreign students, the loss of foreign students is a huge loss to colleges and universities, who many of which really depend upon foreign students' tuition, because they pay full freight. They don't normally get any kind of scholarships. So this is having an effect, and experts say that Trump's anti-immigration rhetoric and crackdown on work visas may be discouraging foreign students from coming here. I mean, it's frequently talented foreign students, especially in the STEM areas, science, technology, energy, and engineering, and math, will come here as foreign students, and they will eventually get a temporary employment visa as a professional worker, a highly skilled worker. Then they frequently go on to become permanent residents of the United States, and many of them have made an enormous contribution to this country. And the fact that many foreign students now are choosing to study elsewhere is concerning. It's very concerning to the future of technological development, particularly in this country. Next slide, please. Here's a graph that shows the decline in the number of visitor visas and student visas issued over the last 4 years. You can see it's declining, and for 2020 it'll be far less, largely because of COVID. Next slide, please. The consequences of a reduction in legal immigration. This is interesting, but speaking at a private gathering in February 2020, White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney stated, quote, "We are desperate for more people. We are running out of people to fuel the economic growth that we've had in our nation over the last 4 years. We need more immigrants." Noting he was referring to legal immigration. Economist Austin Goolsbee explained in October 2019 that GDP growth is a function of the number of people and income per person, productivity, and restricting immigration hurts both measures. Immigrants start, this is interesting, immigrants start companies at twice the rate of Native Americans. And half the companies of the Fortune 500 list of companies were started by immigrants or their children. Such innovation helps drive productivity. Goolsbee opined, quote, "The long-run health of the US economy is in serious danger from a self-inflicted wound, the Trump administration's big cuts in immigration." He cited statistics indicating immigration to the US fell 70% in 2018 to only 200,000 people, the lowest level in more than a decade. If immigration stayed at that level rather than the typical 1 million per year, the GDP would be 1 trillion lower than it would otherwise be in a decade. Further, retirement programs such as Social Security and Medicare are funded by payroll taxes paid by workers. Fewer workers means significant funding shortfalls for these programs. Next slide, please. The US population is native born people are just, we're not having as many babies as we used to. This is a problem. The native workforce growth has slowed to a crawl, and expanding US businesses are becoming desperate for workers. Immigrants can fill that void. Next slide, please. Immigration and highly skilled workers. Many immigrants arrive with high levels of education, technical skills, and prepared to fill critical jobs in the US economy. A study by the Center for Immigration Studies noted that 44% of medical scientists, 34% of software engineers, and 25% of chemists in the US were born in other countries. As the share of immigrants grows, their shares of these high-end jobs are expected to grow too. Many industries heavily depend upon skilled, educated immigrant labor, most notably the medical field. 28% of all physicians and surgeons were immigrants in 2017. And 24% of nurses and psychiatric and home healthcare aides are also immigrants. Next slide, please. Immigration of lower skilled workers. Without the many immigrants who fill lesser skilled jobs in this country as home healthcare aides, agricultural workers, meat packers, construction workers, hospitality workers, among others, our country would suffer considerably. Allowing the undocumented a means to achieve lawful immigration status would be a huge boost to the US economy and to US workers. It would drive up wages, increase tax revenues. It would be a huge plus. All of the major think tanks, the US Chamber of Commerce, the Florida Chamber of Commerce, and on it goes, have all endorsed comprehensive immigration reform, including a pathway to legal status, lawful permanent residence for the undocumented. It would be good for the country. Next slide, please. This is some interesting factoids about immigrants and COVID-19, examples of immigrant-owned companies that are helping us through the pandemic. Moderna, the first company to ship a vaccine for testing against COVID-19, was founded by an immigrant. Zoom, the company we're connecting with to each other tonight, was founded by Chinese-born immigrant Eric Yuan, who was denied an H-1B visa 8 times before he was finally able to get to the US. Glad he got here. Instacart, which provides grocery shopping services, was founded by immigrant Apurva Mehta, Indian. The company has provided 500,000 new jobs in the US since last March. Chef Jose Andres, the celebrity chef who has fed over 19 million people during this crisis, is an immigrant. Peter Tsai, an immigrant from Taiwan, arrived as an international student and later invented the N95 respiratory mask. So you see the contributions are many. Next slide, please. And as far as fighting the epidemic, the people at the front line who are doing the heavy lifting in the hospitals, 44% medical scientists, 28% of practitioners, physicians, surgeons, 24% of nurses are immigrants. Next slide. The administration and Congress should consider enacting immigration policies that will facilitate America's economic recovery from COVID-19 and alleviate the impact of the virus. These policies include restoring legal immigration to the levels that existed prior to the Trump administration's policies that significantly reduced immigration. America should fight the impulse to close its borders and to keep them closed. For a full recovery from the social and economic impacts of the coronavirus, America should be open to the world rather than become more isolated. I'm going to pass on the next several slides because I'm run out of time, but if you're interested, I know I think this PowerPoint will remain up on the website. I've got some statistics regarding immigration and its impact on Florida, which are interesting. But in summary, immigrants make America great, and we need to embrace the world and not become xenophobic and close our borders. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Our second speaker, Bridgette Bennett, is the founder of the Bennett Law Center in Groveland. Her firm is community-centered, and it focuses exclusively on immigration and nationality law with an emphasis on removal defense and humanitarian cases. She has recently opened a second office in Orlando. She serves on the board of directors of the Central Florida chapter of the American Immigration Lawyers Association and serves on the association's National Defense Steering Committee. Bridgette strongly believes in education as a means of addressing non-citizen issues, and thus her firm offers free immigration seminars in schools and churches. The motto of her firm is "All things are possible with God." Her many awards include the Caribbean American Association of Lake Counties Community Service Award and the BBIF. And BBIF, by the way, is a minority lending and training group. The BBIF Championship Entrepreneurship Award for Excellence in Managing a High Growth Law Firm. Bridgette.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. I am very, very grateful to be here with you. And social justice has been something that has been important to me for a very long time. So I'm actually from the beautiful island of Jamaica, and I immigrated to the United States when I was 9 years old. Probably the year before I got here, I was in the 4th grade, and our school was having a trip to Walt Disney World in Florida, right here. And of course, as an 8-year-old, it's everyone's dream, number one, to get on an airplane, and number two, to come to America and to go to Disney World. So of course I rush home. I tell my mom, and I'm like, "Mom, guess what? They're going to Disney World. Can I go?" She says, "Nope." So I was really mad, and I thought, this is not fair. All my friends are going and I can't go. So I actually went around my neighborhood and got signatures for people who agreed that I should have the chance to go to America and to go to Disney World. And so I'm so excited because here I am. I now have a petition. And so of course, everyone's on my side. So my mother has to let me go on this trip. So I go, "Ma, look, everyone in the neighborhood signed this thing and they think I should go. Can I go?" "Nope." And I actually never went to Disney World until I was about 28 years old. But I share this story because social justice is important. And that little girl from Jamaica learned 3 very important lessons that carry through to my approach to immigration law. So the first lesson I learned was that life isn't always fair. The second lesson is that even if life isn't fair, you can always do something about it. And number 3, even if the situation doesn't change, your involvement in the situation will change you. And so that's what I believe social justice is, recognizing that things aren't always fair, but engaging in doing something about it. And so things might not change during our lifetime, but certainly the things we do will change us and the people around us. So with that in mind, I came here when I was 9 years old, and I've been very, very grateful to have had a wonderful education in this country. And so I was able to go to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., where I studied English and government. And I met my husband, who is an entertainer and also an immigrant. And our story began in the year 2000. Well, we got married, had 2 children, moved to Florida from Washington, D.C., and for about 10 years, we fought with immigration for him to remain in the United States. In 2006, my husband was actually placed in removal proceedings right here in Orlando. And we had gone through such a rough time. We had 3 different attorneys. over the course of the 10 years, we probably spent over $30,000 in legal fees. And that little girl from Jamaica kind of rose up in me again, because I worked in corporate America. I was making money. We had a good, comfortable life. But here, my husband was undocumented and we were getting nowhere fast. And, you know, the last attorney we had said, hey, you have less than 1% chance of winning this thing. But we wanted to fight because that's who we are, and we wanted to keep our family together. So when people come to me, I know what it feels like to sit across from someone who is wondering, how am I going to manage without my husband? How am I going to raise my children without their father? I've encountered the sleepless nights, the heart palpitations, the headaches, the stress of living with someone that is undocumented. The pain is real. But again, I draw strength from my faith, and I draw strength from that little girl who knew that even with pain, there can be a purpose. And so I left my job in corporate America and decided to go full-time to law school. So between 2008 and 2011, I went to law school. We lost 2 houses, cars. We went through such a rough time financially because it was a huge sacrifice to do that. But I knew that my pain, I could turn my pain into purpose for so many other people. And so when I work with people now, part of what I do is not just to help them navigate the turbulent waters of the immigration world, but it's also to help to build their faith along the way. Because I know that God can change anything. And I am a living testimony of what faith can do. But a lot of times we have to dig deep into our pain and turn it into a purpose. And so as I share the following stories with you, I hope you hear the echoes of pain and the purpose that can come forth as a result. And so even if we don't live to see a lot of the changes that we're fighting for occur, at least we know that we were part of the journey. So again, I thank you guys for this opportunity to share these stories. So even though I had a great ending with my husband is here. He is a United States citizen right now. We fought the hardest court case ever and we won. And that was a 10-year fight. It was costly, personally, financially, emotionally, but we won. Our family is still here, still together. And for that, I am eternally grateful. But my story is not everyone gets a happy ending. And this family that you're seeing on the screen, this is Gustavo and his 4-year-old granddaughter. Gustavo has been a client of mine for about 7 years. He is a good man. He came from Mexico when he was about 17 or 18 years old, and he went to Ohio and he was working on a farm. He heard that there was an opportunity to get a work permit from the immigration office, and he went to that immigration office and he wanted to get a work permit. Well, it was fake. It was actually ICE throwing out false information to suck people in and place them in removal proceedings to deport them. So he went to the office and he was arrested by ICE and placed in removal proceeding. Not knowing English, not knowing how to read the lengthy documents that were given to him, Gustavo didn't know about his court date. In fact, he had gotten another job in Florida and came to Florida. So unbeknownst to him was the fact that he had a deportation order because he did not know about his court date back in 1991. He's been here ever since then. In 1996, he met the love of his life and they got married, and they've been married since 1996. And they built a life here. They both work, they pay taxes. Gustavo has never had an issue with the law. Actually, I think he did get a ticket once for fishing without a license. that in all the time he's been here, over 30 years, he's never had not even a parking ticket. But unfortunately, this February, his wife describes it as the worst day ever. This is a picture of Gustavo and Justine, who was removed from the United States on February 22nd after being here for over 30 years, being married to a United States citizen for 24 years, having children, grandchildren, a farm, paying taxes, no criminal history. He was deported even though his wife's petition was approved, even though our efforts to get a waiver approved from his prior deportation, they denied it. And you know what happened? They denied it falsely. And when he was in Mexico, I think 2 or 3 days later, they sent and told us the case was actually approved. So now he is stuck in Mexico for absolutely no reason because his case should have been approved. And in fact, it was approved. So not everyone gets a happy ending. You would think that someone that had been married to a United States citizen, working and contributing, taking care of his family, could be saved. But this is an example of the worst day ever. And you know what? The worst day ever happens to people, good, hardworking immigrants all the time. I am still working on Gustavo's case, and I do hope that we will be able to reunite Gustavo and his wife in the coming years. I do think it will take years to get him back, but I know he will come back. This is another case that's very close to my heart. This is Claudia and her 2-year-old daughter. I always keep track of how long Claudia's husband has been deported back to Mexico. She went from a wife and a mother of 3 children to a single mother. Fortunately, this family had worked so hard. They had paid off their house. They only owed about $3,200 on their house. And they had presented to ICE office in Tampa, because sometimes if you have a deportation order, you're required to report to the immigration offices. Irais also doesn't have a criminal history outside of driving without a driver license. Immigrants, if you're undocumented, you can't get a driver license for the most part. And that was his only crime. When his wife was 9 months pregnant, they presented to this ICE office and they literally took Irais away from her that day. She was 9 months pregnant. Again, deportation under this administration has been heart-wrenching. I share these 2 stories because these 2 people have so impacted my life. When I look at Claudia, instead of being a wife and a stay-at-home mom to take care of her home and children, she now had to jump out, pay the rent, the mortgage, pay all the bills all on her own. She started selling food, tacos, empanadas, and now she's doing hair and nails to take care of her family. And so this recent birthday celebration marks 2 years since he has been deported back to Mexico. This is their new normal. It took her 6 months to get to Mexico for Irais to meet his daughter for the first time. They have 2 boys, so this little girl is very, very special because this was the first daughter in the family. So this is the new normal for a lot of people that get deported. We hear all the time about deportation, and we don't necessarily really see what it means for these families that are ripped apart. Our nation is built on family unity, and this administration has ruthlessly and consciously made decisions and policies that rip families apart. And as a practitioner that focuses on removal defense, this is something that just hits home so hard because I take it personal. You know, I know what these women were feeling and dreading, and now the worst has happened. And it is the most painful thing to rip a family apart. And on my first slide, my question is still, where is our humanity? And I hope these stories provide you with answers through immigrant eyes and answers through immigrant faith, because I know right now it's only faith. It is only the true peace of God that is getting these families through this time of separation. I hope this is not the new normal for the future. I'm very, very concerned about November, because can we truly endure another 4 years of these cruel, cruel family separations? And this is my opinion. This is not the opinion of the church. Here's another guy I really love. His name is Jesus, or in Spanish, he is known as Jesus. When I met Jesus, probably about 5 years ago, Jesus worked for someone. He was dating a cute girl. They had a baby. And Jesus, he had gotten arrested for driving under the influence, probably 15 years ago. So that's on his record. He is completely sober. And in fact, he runs the AA office or meetings in Leesburg. So here is someone else who's learned to take his pain to make it something good. So now he helps people that are also recovering alcoholics. So he had a deportation order as well. But many, many years ago, he was brutally attacked after coming home from work one day. Jesus cooperated with the Lake County Sheriff's Office, and his perpetrators were eventually taken off of our streets and put into jail. However, no one was ever there to educate him about the U visa. A U visa is for people that are victims of certain types of crimes here in the United States that cooperated with law enforcement to get criminals off the streets. A lot of times immigrants are reluctant to come forward to report crimes because they feel that they're going to become victims of the police themselves, particularly in this era. So they would rather deal with the issue, stay silent so that they can remain safe. They're very concerned about being re-victimized. So until Jesus came to one of our seminars, he did not know about this option. Well, eventually ICE picked Jesus up, and Jesus was detained in Pompano Beach for over 9 months. And I worked with him trying to figure out how to get this guy out to be reunited with his then girlfriend. And I tried to work with the Lake County Sheriff's Office, and because they have to sign something called a supplement B to certify that, in fact, he was a victim and he did cooperate. Well, Lake County Sheriff's Office at the time, they said, "Oh no, honey, we ain't signing nothing." And in fact, their attorney at that time was very nasty to me. And she said, "Oh, we're not signing this." So I said, "Okay, honey." And that little girl from Jamaica rose back up in me. And I said, "That's not fair, but I can do something about it." So I had my assistant call the Lake County Sheriff's Office and made an appointment. I wanted to talk to her boss, because I wanted law enforcement to understand that we need to work together to keep our streets safe. And that includes helping undocumented people feel trust enough in the police or law enforcement in order to report crimes. So that meeting went incredibly well. And I was well received. And you know what? Before I got back to my office, the same attorney who had basically treated me like dirt had to say, "Ms. Bennett, we're going to sign the first certification in Lake County history." And with that, Jesus had 1 foot on the deportation airplane, and they took him off. and he was able to come back home to his family. Since then, Jose's U visa has been approved. We're now in the process of applying for his green card. He has married his sweetheart. They have another son, so now they have 2 children. And Jesus, if you can see here, he is now the business owner of Jesus Alvarez Lawn Care out in Leesburg. And he's done my front yard. He is fantastic. So here is someone who went from the pits to being a business owner. And this is such the story of so many immigrants, not just here in Central Florida, but all over the country, that had to go through so much adversity to get to this point. But they, you know, very resilient and never, ever giving up. And Jesus grants the desires of our hearts. That's what the scriptures say, right? In Psalms, he'll grant you the desires of my heart. In my case, it's tacos. So this is Jesus bringing me tacos. He brings me stuff all the time, even Snicker bars when I'm trying to be on a diet. But that's the kind of relationship we've built over the years. And him and his family have become very, very dear to me. Now, here is another story of a wonderful family. This is Israel and his wife, Irene. She is an American citizen and he is a Mexican born. He had a child in Mexico, which is the girl you see on the right side of the screen. And this is their mutual son in the middle. So what do you do when you get your green card and you've gone through this process for 3-4 years? You go to Disney World. So sometimes, a lot of times, you know, dreams do come true. And that's something that we're so committed to helping people achieve the American dream. I will end on this note. Never stop dreaming. And I'll share with you very briefly the story of my favorite DACA kid. This is Alexis. And Alexis is a UCF graduate. While going to UCF, he worked full-time at the Claremont Mazda. He was Employee of the Year last year. He's gotten married to his sweetheart, who is a Lake County teacher. They have bought their first home, and we are fighting to keep him here. Now, you all know what's going on with DACA. The Supreme Court has spoken that the DACA program needs to continue, but this administration has decided that the Supreme Court no longer has the final say. However, many immigration attorneys, including myself, we are determined to bring federal action against this administration for not following the rules of the Supreme Court. So I know a lot of people are confused about DACA, what's going on, and what it all means. But myself and many other attorneys are committed to fighting this thing to the end so that other dreamers like my Alexis will never stop dreaming. And one of the things, the biblical principles that I take to heart is that love never fails. That is just something that I believe that no matter what, if you have the power and the force of love behind you and in front of you and on both sides of you, you can't lose. And so even though we've lost a lot of court cases, we've lost a lot of great people to deportation, I believe that love never fails. And just like Martin Luther King says, I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great of a burden to bear. Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. And darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And so it is with great love and great joy that I practice immigration law, and I stand on the wings of great and wonderful immigration attorneys such as Ms. Deborah and many others that have gone to pave the way. So I hope that this provides you with some context of some family-based cases, humanitarian cases, and how the administration has impacted. But I stand with you all as you seek social justice and to participate in the process.
Thank you, Bridget.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for your powerful messages. I'm sure that some people have questions. I know there have been some comments. Since I'm not following the chat box, we have someone who is, and that's Kristen Hughes, who's a member of our tech team. And I'm going to turn this portion of the program over to him. Kristen?
Thank you very much, Russ. Deborah and Brigitte, thank you very much for your incredible inspiration. We do have a number of comments and a few questions, and I'm going to share a few of them. And if any of you would like to have a specific question, please go to your chat room now and type your question, and then we will share that with the speakers. So just a few comments to begin with. Clarissa Davis said, thank you, Deborah, for an incredible wealth of information and very well done. Stephanie Dukes said, thanks for the great information. One question that has come to mind comes from Jane Hepting, who's with our Social Justice Committee. She's asking, is Lake County Sheriff working to deport immigrants actively now? Brigitte, maybe that's best for you.
Yes, so I wouldn't say that Lake County Sheriff's Office is actively working to deport immigrants. What is happening is that we are not a sanctuary county or city or state. So whenever someone is encountered and they are arrested for whatever reasons, falsely, truthfully, whatever, they're in jail, the jail will actually contact ICE. So they do have an agreement where if an undocumented person is arrested, they will call ICE. Now, once the criminal case is over, ICE has 48 hours to pick that person up. And I can honestly say that they will pick those people up. I haven't had anyone escape that 48 hours in a long time. So they're not actively going out trying to catch people per se. However, once they are in the system, they do notify ICE.
Thank you very much. Is there, Linda Carpenter asks, is any distinction made between legal and illegal immigrants with respect to deportation?
Actually, so I say undocumented people because I don't believe anyone is illegal per se, but just like Deborah presented, the attack is on both legal and undocumented people that are immigrants. So I say it's on both fronts. In the media, you will see the undocumented person, but the true attack is on legal immigration. I have had to defend people who have been lawful permanent residents for 20, 30 years that are in removal proceedings before an immigration judge. So they're also trying to denaturalize people. This is a brand new committee that their whole entire job is to go and try to find people that have been living here almost all their lives as lawful permanent residents to get them in trouble. So actually, I really don't see a difference. It's an attack on both sides. Ms. Deborah?
It is. We've got the physical wall that Trump wants to build on the border, the physical wall, and then we have the virtual wall. And the virtual wall is the endless changes that have occurred in the last few years that have made becoming a permanent resident a nightmare, staying a permanent resident a nightmare. It's a virtual wall. Most people don't realize the attacks on legal immigration. And now the attacks on citizens through the denaturalization program that the Department of Justice is instituting. So it's across the board. I don't know why this administration is so xenophobic, but it is. It's terribly xenophobic. They don't realize the benefits. I mean, it's our tradition. Our country was based upon the notion that immigrants contribute to this country culturally, intellectually, in all ways. And it's really a shame, and I think people need to speak up, because unless we're unless we're Native Americans, we are all the product of immigration. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. We've had a couple of people asking similar questions. Dennis Wick and Stephanie Dukes have both kind of asked, besides voting, what can we do to help? And then Stephanie's asking that specifically as a state representative, how might she be able to assist in the area of immigration?
Well, one way that we work with our state representatives is when some cases experience particularly long delays, or there is a particularly pressing need that needs to be responded to. So we've worked with some representatives to kind of call immigration and try to get something moved through quickly. Another area that I would like some help with is to, start building a new relationship with the Lake County Sheriff's Office. We do have a different sheriff, and things have been extremely difficult. They have not been signing certifications, and they basically make excuses as to why they don't want to sign these anymore. So, rebuilding that relationship with law enforcement would be a wonderful help.
So besides voting, what can an individual do to help?
Letters to the editor. Yeah, letters to the editor, definitely. Supporting politicians who are pro-immigration. There's an organization called Immigrants List. It's a PAC, and they vet candidates, and they fund the campaigns of immigrants' rights advocates. That's a good way to contribute. And to call out politicians who are clearly speaking nonsense. Our own governor speaks a lot of nonsense about immigration. He really, when he tried to say that agricultural workers, undocumented agricultural workers, were spreading the coronavirus. I mean, please, this sort of thing needs to be called out. It's not right.
Thank you. Andrea Coburn asks, is it true that neither economic problems nor domestic abuse legally qualifies as refugee status?
Well,
and then also as a follow-up, what's the current situation concerning persons who are here for medical studies on medical trials or medical trials?
As far as, what was the first question?
Economic problems and domestic
economic
abuse.
No, there's economic, there's no such thing as an economic refugee. To qualify as a refugee, somebody has to meet the definition of refugee under the United Nations protocol. And it's someone who is fearing persecution, has had past persecution, or fears future persecution on account of race, religion, membership in a particular social group, sex, gender, or political opinion. And it doesn't include economic, anything having to do with economics. Now, one change in the Trump administration's refugee guidelines is that persons who are the victims of domestic violence are no longer eligible. For the past, I don't know, 10, 12 years, due to a precedent decision, persons fleeing domestic violence where the government is unable or unwilling to address it and control it, are potentially eligible for asylum. But that's no longer the case. And it's no longer the case that persons fleeing gang-based persecution, which is the reason why so many people come from Central America, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala. These folks have a serious problem with gang-based persecution. And if you listen to the stories of particularly the young men, but also the young women fleeing those countries, they're real. They're real. People are they are murdered. They are, yeah, it's bad. It's very bad. And no longer is it the case that someone fleeing gang-based violence, even if the government is unable and unwilling to control the problem, to address to address it in a serious way and cannot afford protection, these folks are no longer eligible for asylum, thanks to former Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who wrote that opinion. So what was the last question?
Regarding medical testing.
Oh, yeah. Well, there used to be something called, what was it called? Bridget Medical Deferred Action, medical. Anyway, there used to be a program where persons who have serious life-threatening illnesses and they cannot get medical treatment in their home countries could stay here to get that medical treatment. And they were granted, maybe it was called medical parole. Anyway, they were allowed to stay here indefinitely so long as they were undergoing medical treatment, they and their caregiver. No longer. That program has been canceled as well.
Thank you. Chris Higgins has asked, is it true that the sheriff on anyone detained for a traffic stop might result in them being referred to ICE?
Well, I will try to say this as nicely as possible. There is a thing called DWM, driving while Mexican.
Yeah.
And it's real. I mean, back in the day, it used to be driving while black, right? The reason we don't have a Mercedes is because my husband kept getting pulled over right here in Claremont all the time because it wasn't his car. But racial profiling is real, even in this context, and especially where my office is, Groveland, Mascot, they pull people over all the time. So now they generally don't call ICE right away. The people who actually call ICE right away are usually the Florida Highway Patrol. They do contact Border Patrol right away. But if it's a general traffic stop, those people get placed in jail and the jail will contact ICE. So yes, it exists, but the cops aren't literally calling ICE at the moment, but they do cooperate with them.
Thank you. If a person's a naturalized citizen, is it possible that they could lose that designation and be deported?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. If what they're doing is they're going into people's immigration files and looking for any irregularities. For example, when you apply for naturalization, they look at your entire immigration history. And it could be something, there's a question on the naturalization application, have you ever misrepresented a material fact? Okay, so maybe 20 years ago, the person went to the US consulate, wherever, for a visitor's visa and said that they were coming to visit when in fact, maybe they were intending to marry their, their lover. And so it might be a gotcha. They are looking for those seemingly, not so serious situations, and they are wanting to ramp up the denaturalizations. And depending upon the reason for it, it can result in the person being placed in removal proceedings and being stripped not only of their citizenship, but removed. Yes.
And I do quite a few of those cases. For some reason, the one that has come up the most in the last, probably I would say year, are people who their parents had petitioned for them and they actually got married during the process.
Ah.
So a lot of the times the parents are the ones filling out the questionnaire, and the time has passed. So now the kid is married, and by right, they're not supposed to get the green card. And now they have it, even though they were married at the time. So those people are being placed in proceedings. I have this one lady right now. She's a teacher. She's like freaking out because she never filled out the paperwork. It was her parents filling it out. So she didn't make a misrepresentation. It'll be fine because there is relief for people like that. So it's very difficult to take away someone's green card. There is a court process, there's due process, and we're generally able to win most of those cases, but it's very lengthy and it's very expensive.
So looking at this just from the other direction, if a person is here legally and they had a green card, but they lost it, is there a way for them to prove that they're here legally without the card?
Yeah, it's like if you lose your driver's license, it doesn't mean you're not allowed to drive. So you don't lose your status, you just lose the proof of it, so they can apply very quickly for a replacement card.
Very good. Well, thank you. That brings us to the end of most of our questions here. I do want to share one response that Bridget, you shared with everyone, and that is that if you want to learn more about immigration issues, that Bridget is inviting everyone to tune into her Facebook live show, which is entitled Immigrants Bridge. And that's on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays at 7 p.m. And you can get there by dialing on your website to facebook.com/ and that's Bennett Law Center, LLC. That's Bennett Law Center, LLC. And that's Bennett with 2 T's. So thank you both. Incredible night. We really learned a lot. Russ, back to you.
Okay, Kristen, thanks. Again, a heartfelt thank you to Deborah and to Bridget. You two are dynamite, and you've given us all messages that we will not soon forget. Thank you so much. And I would also like to thank Jane Hepting, whose tireless work makes this series possible, and to Kristen Hughes, Val Rosato, and the technical team who worked very hard to master the challenges, and I assure you there are many challenges, of making this technology work for us. Our next talk will be in 2 weeks, and that's September 27th. It will be Lake County Water Authority member Peggy Cox. She will be speaking on how can we protect Lake County's. I hope you will tune in. Until then, thank you for coming, and let's keep the light of social justice and healthy environment burning. For now, I will extinguish us and say good night. Stay informed, side with love, stay well. Good night.